I think I know that's gonna hit me.
Scares you every time, don't it?
Every time.
Good evening. We're about to begin this meeting of, let me get my glasses here, September the 20th. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. Anyone who would like to join me, please feel free to do so. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, glasses on, glasses off, glasses on, glasses off. All right, first item on the agenda is roll call, and we have the roll, but Mr. Daniels is on the phone with us. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I identified him. So with him being on the phone, that means all our votes tonight will be roll call votes. So we'll be keeping that in mind. Next item on the agenda is the election of a board education chairperson for the 2022-2023 term. Are there any nominations?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Tim Brewer.
All right, nomination for Tim Brewer has been made. I will serve if elected. Ms. Hayes?
I'd like to second that motion, sir.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that the nomination cease.
Motion's been made, nominations to cease. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Mr. Johnson.
Ms. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster.
Yes.
Ms. Andrews.
Yes.
Mr. King.
I'm a no.
Ms. Hawkins.
Yes.
Mr. Daniels.
Yes.
Mr. Wise.
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Gregory.
Yes.
Mr. Lacey.
Yes.
Mr. Brewer.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-1.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. I'll be your chairman. I'll do the best job I can possibly do for the next year. And the next item on the agenda is election of a board vice chair for the 2022-2023 term. Is there a nomination?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Tammy Hayes to be our vice chair.
Ms. Andrews nominates Tammy Hayes.
Second.
I second that.
All right, seconded by, we don't need a second on it. It's just a nomination.
How do, what's the proper way to add another name in?
Just, you can do it right now.
But Stephen King.
Stephen King, all right. We have a nomination for Tammy Hayes. All in favor, Mr. Johnson? Yeah, Mr. Johnson, take the roll on Tammy Hayes.
You need to make somebody needs to make a motion to nomination cease. That's all.
Okay.
I will make that motion that nomination cease with those two names.
All right, then you'll roll call vote. Hayes was first, so you'll roll call vote Hayes.
Right.
If she has more than the majority, then she'll be elected.
She'll be elected, okay. Motion been made to nomination cease. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Gregory. Any discussion? Seeing none, now all in favor, Mr. Johnson?
Ms. Hayes.
Wait for myself.
This is you.
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster.
I'll vote for Mr. King.
Ms. Andrews.
Ms. Hayes? Yes.
Mr. King.
King.
Ms. Hawkins.
Hayes.
Mr. Daniels.
Hayes.
Mr. Wise.
Hayes.
Ms. Brown.
Hayes.
Mr. Gregory.
Hayes.
Mr. Lacey.
Mr. King.
Chairman Brewer.
Ms. Hayes.
Motion carries 8-3.
All right, we have a chairman and a vice chairman. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the regular agenda as presented. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Ms. Andrews.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wise. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Johnson, take the roll.
Ms. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster.
Yes.
Ms. Andrews.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins.
Yes.
Mr. Daniels,
Yes.
Mr. Wise,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Gregory,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy,
Yes.
Chairman Brewer.
Yes.
Motion carries.
We have an agenda. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Mr. Wise. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Mr. Johnson?
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Daniels,
Yes.
Mr. Wise, Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Gregory,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy,
Yes.
Chairman Brewer.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, we have a consent agenda done. Next item on the agenda is consideration of minutes, discussion and interaction regarding the minutes of the August 16th, 2022 regular meeting. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Hayes. Second?
Second.
By Ms. Hawkins. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Mr. Johnson?
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins,
Yes.
Mr. Daniels,
Yes.
Mr. Wise, Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Gregory,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy,
Yes.
Chairman Brewer.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is recognition and hearing of delegations. We have one signed up, Ms. Daniels. Come on up, give your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes to speak on the resolution for 3rd and 4th graders.
All right. Pardon me. Okay. Hi, my name is Joanna Daniels. I reside at 152 North Shadow Haven Way, and I'm here to talk about the resolution supporting our students and teachers by requesting the Tennessee General Assembly to amend. I want to say I completely agree. I think that I see where the state is coming. I see their intentions is they want to see 3rd and 4th graders have a higher proficiency rate. However, I'm for smaller government. I am for, the county and the local district to really be the watchman, but there does need to be some accountability, of course, to the state and the Tennessee Board of Education. However, with that being said, I do believe that where our 3rd and 4th graders are in Sumner County is not good enough. I do believe that if they do amend it, that hopefully you will take some community involvement, some community comments, and we'll listen to a lot of the parents that I represent and that are coming to me and saying that they are not happy with the proficiency of the 3rd and 4th graders in Sumner County. Yes, there has been improvement. However, it's not enough. There has not been enough improvement, and it is extremely severely lacking in Sumner County. So I just want to say that I do actually support you guys on this, and however, I am going to hope that you will take some input and really hear from the parents here, so that the state doesn't feel that they have to micromanage you guys. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Daniels. Next item on the agenda is reports from the director, Dr. Phillips.
Good to see everyone. Just a couple of things that I wanted to go through with you guys this evening. I'm going to pass around for all of you that have been on the board. You will recognize this pretty quickly. Always in September, usually in September after we give our first 20-day report to the state, what we call a 20-day report. Basically, it's where we're certifying our enrollment for each school in the total district. Once we do that, I always keep a spreadsheet of the past, oh gosh, now what is that, 20 years? And then on the back, it shows this year's. We do it each month 1 through 9, that we submit this and certify it to the state. So it's basically a good way for you to see enrollment trends August to August, year over year. And I know that many times over the course of the past 12 years, we have referenced this in conversations about rezoning, about future building plans, those types of things. So I think it's good information to have. I think you guys appreciate getting it. And for those of you that you can kind of see where new schools opened and how they downloaded other schools. And so, you know, you might want to spend some time just looking at this because you kind of see where things have happened across the school system. So that's that. The second thing, I know all of you have seen this. We've communicated it. You've seen it on the news and in media. But 24 reward schools this year, which is the highest number that we've ever had in Sumner County, and we're proud of that. That's a lot of hard work by students, by teachers, by parents, by campus leaders, by leadership here at the district office. And I know all of you have expressed, I know several principals have mentioned that some of you have congratulated them. But as you look at that list, I'm proud because it impacts every community here, every community. So all of you are impacted in your specific district by having reward schools. And I think that's just shows the strength of our system from top to bottom all across the county, and really, really proud of that. So just want to make sure and give another shout out to all of those schools. I'm going to talk a little bit now about somewhat of a new item. This will include some language that is more you probably, if you've been on the board, you've probably heard this from time to time, but I'm talking a little bit about amendments and what happened at the county last night, and then what that kind of does in regard to the school district, people within the school district that were trying to purchase things, and then kind of the path forward. So just want to make sure you're up to date, you kind of know what's happening. And like I said, this just happened last night. So each month when we have budget amendments on our agenda, if they require by law approval from the county, then we will send those to the county and they'll go through the Education Committee, Budget Committee, and then to the full commission. I want you to understand, and I think they probably, some of them may be learning this as well, we never ask for a budget amendment that's increasing an expenditure. Okay, so we're not asking for them to appropriate more money in a budget amendment. We're not asking them to approve a purchase. We're basically following the law to say this is what we said we were going to do in our budget. The law requires us to ask you for approval for this, and then they basically vote to approve that amendment. So I'm just going to go through a couple of those that were on the agenda last night at the county commission meeting and kind of explain to you, kind of the impact of that, because it does impact schools all across the county. And, hopefully we'll be able to share this information with them in the coming month, and then hopefully they'll approve them. So the folks that are impacted in our system by this will be able to move forward. So I'm just going to go through those, okay? And then I could be happy to share the list with you guys. You can just ask us for it, and we'll be glad to provide that to you in case you get asked a question about it. So the first couple, we have every year we have funds that are restricted, daycare funds. So when daycares operate, the law doesn't allow the school board to spend those funds, nor does it allow the county commission. I mean, it's just, they're restricted for a reason. If you look in our fund balance every year, I mention it's operation plus those daycare balances. And so it's very explicit about how those funds have to be spent at the school where the daycare is at, where the money was generated. And so this is something that happens every year. And as those yearly reserves at the end of the year, the money that's been generated there, it rolls forward, and then just like any other business, you would expend those dollars the next year. If you had a fund balance from the previous year that went forward, you would spend those dollars for things that were appropriated by law. So at the end of the day, you know, they didn't approve for the daycares to spend the money that they already have. If that, just to be quite honest with you, the money's already there, it's been there. It's their money that they generated. So these individual schools that have daycares that want to spend dollars now are being held up and not being able to spend that. And they're not asking for any more money. It's the money they've generated over the years, previous years, and spent every year, just like we're asking for this year. So I'll give you some examples of how that is. And that's about $1.3 million when you look all across the system. But just this month, some things that they are kind of holding up because hopefully they just didn't have their questions answered and we can get that straight. North Sumner was trying to buy $5,000 for the purchase of some Chromebooks. They can't do that. You know, hopefully in another month or so they can if it gets approved. If not, then they won't be able to. Portland Gateview had $68,000 for a new basketball court outside and computer equipment and some supplies for the daycare. Going to have to hold up on that. Union Elementary was $27,000 for an interactive projector in the gym for them to use before and after school. Can't do that. Wiseman, $15,000 for furniture and technology. They won't be able to do. And then HB Williams had about $20,000 for technology that they won't be able to do until it gets approved. So we've made the principals at those buildings today aware that, you know, they were expecting to be able to get a PO and order that stuff, but they'll have to hold up until the county approves for them to use the funds that they already have. There were some other things too that happened that were all part of those budget amendments that were deferred back to education and budget. So they didn't vote no, they just deferred them back to next month through the committee cycle. We had two situations where we basically the insurance company paid us. One was for repairs to the baseball field at Portland. Do you remember the storm that came through a couple of months ago? It's on the news. Hit Portland High School. We had some damage there. It was enough damage that we filed a claim, and so we had about a little over $71,000 the insurance company was paying us to repair the baseball field. And so we just called today and just had to stop. You know, we're not making any repairs because they literally wouldn't approve for us to amend the money into the budget so we could pay for the repairs. The same thing with an insurance payment for a bus that was wrecked last spring. The insurance company paid us, totaled the bus and paid it. And so we're hoping to turn around and use those funds to purchase, you know, to basically going to purchase another bus. And they said that they were going to hold up on that too. So that was like $250,000. So, you know, just those two kind of held up for 30 days at least. At least those two issues that were really just insurance, the insurance company paying us the money. This one, you guys that have been here will know, you know, every year for the past, I think 5 years now maybe, we have been allocating dollars to the high schools. Maybe 5 or 6, allocating dollars to high schools, and the high school principals and athletic teams have been spending those dollars, and sometimes they're used on other things as well, but it's all capital items, what the comptroller considers capital items, and we do as well. And so that's been really beneficial to our high school campuses, especially. A couple of years ago, we started doing that for middle school, and then 2 years ago, we started doing that for elementary school. This is the second year, last year and this year. And that's been a big help. It just helps our principals with capital items. They typically will pair that money with money they've raised through other sources. So it's kind of almost like a a matching almost to most extent. Most times, that's exactly what happens. So I give you some examples. In the past, what we've done is we've allowed, especially high schools, to carry that money forward. It's money that they already have. We've given them, it's there. We've allowed them to carry it forward because they're trying to save up for a larger project. We know about it, but they're trying to save those funds year over year. So as those fund reserves roll from one fiscal year to the next fiscal year, we may have for 2 years already planned that they're going to save the dollars the county, the school district, GP has given them, general purpose budget. We're going to save because we fundraised, and we're going to use other dollars and do a bigger project like a building or something that gets bid out that it's going to be a substantial amount of money. And we've had several of those across the county over the last 5 or 6 years. So, all we're really doing is just saying, hey, these are funds that are already here. We're just going to utilize them this year, and this is how it's going to happen. And so we're just rolling those reserve funds forward. So I give you an example. These were all on the agenda for last night's commission meeting. We had $209,000 at Gallatin High School that they were going to use to replace football bleachers and some other capital projects at the school. Hendersonville High School has 74. Merrill Hyde Magnet has a little over 150. And they had a plan to replace some things in their locker rooms, install fencing on campus and the playground, some exterior signage for the campus, all things that we've approved for them to do over the course of time. White House High School had about 156 actually. They were going to do a new hardwood gym floor and then some LED lighting. Station Camp High, I think, has been planning for a couple of years. We've bid it once or twice. A soccer building. The last time we bid it, it was too high. They wanted to do it, and now they're trying to rebid that again. And we were going to rebid it, but they have their reserve fund balance as part of what they're going to use for that. And then Westmoreland High School, I think, had about $10,000 that they were going to use out of reserve funds over there. Grants. These are grants that come to us. And the law, I think, we're going to ask the comptroller, but I think some of these may not actually need approval at the county, but we're going to send something to the comptroller and get clarification about that. We've always sent them to the county anyway, just to have a record of it, but I guess now we'll probably ask the comptroller and let them weigh in on whether we actually have to or not. But we had a grant for the Family Resource Center. Here, which is where we buy things. If all of you probably have been to the Family Resource Center, it's where we buy things to help students that are in need and families that are in need. We had $50,000 grant there that they delayed. Had a $60,000 Facebook donation that they delayed. Dollar General $5,000 donation for the literacy program. A couple of other big ones. We had about a little over $824,000 in billing for SPED services. We do that every year, and basically that's Miss Dam, Miss Herron, and her team working through SPED and nursing, and anything that we do as a procedure that's billed back. We get funding back from the state of Tennessee for doing that procedure. And so that's something that we turn around and use that revenue to put back into the program to pay for things through SPED and nursing. So that one was a big one too. So I could kind of go on and on and on, but the point is none of those things require more funding from the county. All of them comply with what we're doing within our budget. It's happened year over year over year over year, and hopefully we can get it straightened out. But I didn't want you to hear that, well, we're not being able to spend our dollars at the high schools, or we're not able to spend dollars in our daycares, because at the end of the day, we're making sure that we comply with the law, but at the same time, we don't want to have our people in the system put off and put off and put off and be able to purchase things that they have the funds to purchase at the end of the day. And there's a couple of things on tonight's agenda that are under the amendments. We have in Katie's department, she's not here, but we had about $485,000 of Safe Schools carryover funds, and also some new state revenue, which happens every year. And this is really kind of critical safety type things. And so we've got about 75,000 of that's STARS contract. Most of you are probably familiar with the STARS program that we have in our high schools. 85,000 of it is post-certification for SROs, where we, in our MOU, we pay for those things for the sheriff's office. That's part of what we do with them for our SRO program. $200,000 to upgrade hardware for the panic alarm systems in the school system at the front office. And then some other things too that are there. It's just real important that, and I'm hoping that once we kind of make them aware, everybody, some new folks, and it's a learning curve. We're hopeful that once we have an extended discussion and we can work through hopefully the issues that they have and help understand that it's not new revenue, we're not asking for more money, these are funds that are already there, then hopefully we'll be able to get past this hurdle. But I didn't want you to be blindsided by someone in your district asking why they couldn't buy something if it was impacted by last night's deferral.
Ms. Andrews.
Yeah. So just a question specifically regarding the two buildings that were impacted, Station Camp, soccer. I know I've seen lots of discussions on that as far as why do they not have a field house and so forth. And then also with the Portland baseball, with those both being structural entities, and especially with regard to supply and so forth and bids, do we feel like there's going to be any impact to the adjustment of the cost of what those would be comparative to what we were already anticipating?
I don't think so. The Station Camp building, we're going to have to go back through the bid process for that. And of course, we will. Yeah, oh yeah. We'll go back through the bid process. It goes out on the street, and just like any other building that we build. So I don't necessarily know that there will be a direct impact for those beyond if they wanted to do it within the next 30 days, they probably can't, but they could after that if they do approve the amendments at some point.
So specifically too, thinking about baseball and just knowing what their season is. So they deferred last night for it to go through education. I can't remember exactly what the steps are as far as when those committees meet. Is it feasible to think that they're going to be able to go through education and then budget and then get it to the commission floor all within next month? Or are we still going to look at the timing? Will it be end up actually being November?
I think the best I can understand, I've had two emails today, but I think they're planning to have those back through education and budget this month, October. So that's kind of why I was saying, it's like a 30-day. Hopefully, they get the answers they need and kind of understand how that works, and our amendments work when they come to them, and hopefully we get it cleared up.
Ms. Andrews. Mr. King?
Yeah, so I'm just curious, did they offer any reasons for why they were doing, holding off, deferring some of these items?
The only communication I've had was just with Chairman Brown on education, and he had just emailed that they had some questions. I think they did approve them at education and budget, and we said, hey, if you'll send us your questions, we'd be glad to answer them for you, try to help. It was after the meetings occurred, and then because it passed education and budget, we felt like we didn't get anything back asking specific questions. We thought, well, maybe David Lawing answered it, or if there was a question, and we didn't get anything else until today when we were notified, that they would, refer back to education and budget.
Thank you, Ms. King. Any other comment? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Next item on the agenda is discussion and or action regarding a resolution requesting the Tennessee General Assembly allow school districts to make retention decisions for third grade and fourth grade students. Is there a motion? Motion by Ms. Andrews, second by Mr. Lancaster. Any discussion? Seeing none?
I do have one question, or sorry, he was, I think Stephen was.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
Mr. Lancaster.
So, I may be the only person that has a third grade student that this affects right now, but, so what is, and this might be a question for Mr. Langford, what is the current policy, or what is the current plan if we find the students having issues or whatever reading, and what's our current process?
It's pretty close to what was in the law before they added in the spot, particularly about the literacy requirements. Basically, by February, we typically want to show that a student has had a number of intervention opportunities by February, and then there's usually a meeting with the parents to say, we want to try this intensely between now and the end of the year, because right now your child is in jeopardy of needing to be retained. Because ultimately the goal is to always make the decision that's best for that child. And the great body of research shows you should only retain as a last resort, because it doesn't really help kids. Only in extreme circumstances does retention help. So, but basically it really kind of resembles, it would be a variation of the individual learning plans that are referenced in the revised law, where basically you would have your team probably reading, if it's reading, it'd be reading interventionist, principal, guidance counselor, teacher, some team like that could best serve that child's needs, and then they would put forward a pretty intense, the goal being to get the child ready to move forward to fourth grade by the end of third grade, but then if not, then making the decision on retention.
Currently, do we get these test scores back in time to make that decision in third grade though right now? I mean, I know historically,
yeah,
TN ready takes forever.
So we get quick scores back pretty quickly, but quick scores are not real. They're very statistically problematic in terms of, you wouldn't want to make a decision about a child's retention or moving forward based on a quick score, because what we don't have there are the cut scores that decide whether a child is approaching, meeting expectations, exceeding expectations. So those are the ones that we get back the quickest. Even that would be hard because they come in right at the end of the school year. We typically, this year we got our test scores earlier than we ever had before, and it was the first week of July that we got overall assessment scores by students. So yeah, I mean, it's the turnaround time to try to figure this out is, I don't know, there's some more toolkits and more guidance that we're anticipating coming from TDOE, but what we would probably have to do would be to use our benchmark scores to identify that, as opposed to the actual TN Ready scores, because we wouldn't have those by the time we got those back, our summer learning programs would be over, and we couldn't really, I mean, if we tried to think through the logistics of getting those scores back the first week of July, communicating with parents, and then trying to squeeze them, and Union would start about 2 weeks after we got scores back, the rest of the school system 3 weeks after, 3.5 weeks after. So yeah, it would be very difficult to be able to turn that around in any kind of meaningful way. Not difficult, impossible.
I mean, like I said, as a third grade parent, if my kid, my daughter was to score in one of these, if this worked the way, if the deadline, if we were able to meet everything, I would love to be notified, like, hey, your child is in the approaching expectations or below expectations. We think she would benefit from a learning loss camp, or
right.
Recommend her for fourth grade tutoring. But I think those parts of the law are good, but at the same time, I don't necessarily think it's like, well, you have to do this. If I have a conversation with her teacher and she says, well, the entire school year she's been, doing great, or she's been consistently at a level 3 or a level 4 on a standards-based scoring. So that's my issue with it, is the sole focus on that 195-minute testing window.
Yeah, and I think.
But I do like that it identifies potential issues that we could take steps to address if we got the data soon enough.
And I think there's some other parts in there that are strong. Is we start giving reading screeners in kindergarten 2 to 3 times a year, and we communicate with parents immediately for kids that flag as needing assistance and help. But that's something relatively new. It's going to take it'll take a year or two for those kids to get into 3rd grade to see some of the benefits of that. Because I would argue that problematic reading in 3rd grade is not a 3rd grade issue. It started in kindergarten, and that's where we need to have a program that hits all those grades together and isn't quite so punitive on the back end. But yeah, I agree. The tutoring and others are useful, but not with the holding back.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. I believe Mr. King was next, and then we'll come to you, Ms. Hawkins.
Okay, so yeah, I am, as I'm preparing to vote on this, I'm thinking back to our study session, and I do have a question. In our study session, we talked about how pivotal 3rd grade is in terms of students that don't meet proficiency. They're at greater risk for things like less wages in life, poverty, even things like mental illness, depression. Not to mention it's very difficult for them to get back on track, and this is all research based. And so the stakes are very high, and the state is saying one thing, and we're going to ask them to modify, but that also means that we have a responsibility on our end to see that those students, and I think you said it was probably about 1,200 students, am I correct, that have moved into 4th grade that were not proficient on this last round of TN Ready tests. Is that right? About 1,200?
Yeah. So I ran the number because you had asked, Mr. King, you asked last time about special ed. So I looked up and pulled out, not all of these special ed kids would be removed because it would be an IEP team decision. But if we pull just for the sake of knowing the numbers, it's about, if you leave special education students in, it's about 1,300 3rd graders. If you pull all the special ed kids out, it would be 295 students that would need summer school, summer learning, and tutoring, and then 643 that would have to choose between. That would need to choose between the two.
So about 900, about 1,000. Okay, so we've got 1,000 students going into 4th grade that need some assistance. And we don't want to leave any stone unturned. We don't want to hinder those students, and we don't want to. The stakes are very high, especially in 3rd grade. We were just speaking about leading up to 3rd grade, those preceding years, and we don't want to hinder them. And in terms of test prep, my question is, does our current ELA curriculum align with TN Ready? Now, I've heard from several teachers that their opinion is that it does not. And if that's the case, then it seems to me that we're setting these students up for failure, if that's the case. So again, my question is, does the current ELA curriculum align with TN Ready?
So no curriculum is going to perfectly align with a state test, because I think with that, Louisiana was going to pilot this prior to COVID and they weren't able to, with something that was called Warm Reads. Louisiana has a statewide curriculum that every school in Louisiana uses. And so what they were going to be able to do, because they all use the same stuff or same materials, is they were going to be able to give a test to kids that came out of the curriculum. So it would not be the first time that kids had read that passage, because it would come from things, they would be tested over things that they'd had exposure to. That would be hugely beneficial for students with disabilities, for economically disadvantaged, for English language learner students, because it's not cold. When you give kids a cold read on something, kids that have more prior knowledge will do better. So that's part of what happens when you see, so the TN Ready test is total cold read. So if if you're asking is it aligned in that way, no, because there's really no curriculum that could match what TN Ready does because of the way TN Ready is designed. In terms of what we're seeing in terms of test score movement with kids, I would say that we're higher now test score wise in 2022 than we were in 2019. So we have seen gains with our curriculum. If you're asking about specifically about interventions, what is causing kids to not be able to read? There are a couple different things that we have to address. The biggest piece is something that's relatively new at scale. Like Norma's team has always, they've been crying from the mountaintops for 20 plus years about foundational literacy, that you have to teach phonics comprehensively and foundationally. The materials and all that for the school district are really in their second to third year. And so like what you will see now is from the very first day kindergartners walk in class, they're receiving foundational literacy. We try kindergarten, we try to spend that entire year, because the thing is with kindergarten, you have kids coming in at all different levels. You have some kids that come in from the very first day already reading. You have some that don't know that books read from left to right. So kindergarten teachers are amazing at finding that, but you have to have some time to catch up. So kindergarten's primarily focused on giving kids the opportunity to catch up. By second semester, we can begin to identify kids that are behind. We do that through a reading screener that we give, and that will help flag, for instance, things like dyslexia. It helps us identify kids that have learning disabilities, but also distinguish kids that are just having problems coding, different things like that. So what we do then is we add on top of that, in addition to their regular foundational literacy lesson each day, we add on to that intervention that is also in the same, it's also Wilson, which is Orton Gillingham, which is really one of the strongest commercially available to scale ways of teaching foundational literacy. So we try to keep them so they're learning the same techniques to build on it. We extend that up all the way through 8th grade. So that's the second piece that, once we get the foundational piece really, it's in place, but once we begin to see the fruit of that, the second thing, here's the question you run into with reading is, can they read the passage that's in front of them? And secondarily, can they comprehend what they read? And those are almost two. There's the sounding out the words, and then there's the context. And so that's a combination of knowledge building curriculum, so that kids are being exposed to U.S. history, world history, science, different things like that, and learning. But the other thing is what we're looking at, the next step now that we got the foundational piece in, is there are intervention tools that work on comprehension. What used to happen for about 30 years, younger people would tell you that they did about 8.5 million worksheets. If you came up under No Child Left Behind in 2000, about main idea. What's the main idea of this passage? And a lot of intervention focus was discerning main idea. The problem was you couldn't tell, does this child not know the main idea, or do they just not understand what they read? Once we can say confidently that our kids can read and decode, we can really pour our efforts, especially around 2nd or 3rd grade, working towards comprehension. And I realize it's a long answer to your question, but
Well, specifically, I'm thinking of how questions are formatted in our curriculum. And if you look at the TN Ready test,
yeah,
it has a specific style, a format of how the questions are worded. And in our current ELA curriculum, are students getting experience with those types, that same formatting, that same style of question? Are they getting that in subsequent years prior to 3rd grade? And I know that in the curriculum there are modules, and at the end of each module there's a question set. And some of those question sets, there's questions, but students some of them are different in terms of the way they're formatted compared to the TN Ready test. So I'm just wondering if there's, if that's the case, students might be going into the TN Ready test not familiar with the type of questioning that they're getting into, and I sometimes wonder, if maybe more of our kids are good readers. It's just that they've not been prepared for the test. They're seeing questions and the way that it's stylized, formatted, it's just kind of, it's not what they're used to. And I guess that's what I'm asking is our current ELA curriculum aligned in such a way that it's helping them have experience with those types of questions.
So we tried, education tried for about 25 years, skilling and drilling standards to improve literacy scores, and it didn't really move literacy scores very much. But I think what you raise is a very real need of teachers, which is you kind of need both and. You know, the problem that you run into on standardized tests sometimes is you'll get a third grade question and it'll be, I can't remember what it was about a couple years ago, but it was like marmots or something like that. So if you were from Idaho, you had a pretty good idea what a marmot was. If you were from Cottontown, you may or may not have an idea what that was. So kids that had background knowledge had a little bit head start. Kids that had traveled and been, you know, your more economically privileged students had an advantage on that. So that's the problem with the construction of all standardized tests, is that you're going to catch a cold read that's not coming from, you know, curriculum or anything. But I do think what I think is very valid is, and what we've tried to do is, so we use Mastery Connect. It used to be called Encase, and that's our benchmark. And so what it does.
Sorry, can you say that? What was that called one more time?
It's called Mastery Connect now.
Okay.
The educational marketplace now, larger fish swallow small fish all the time. It's in the years that we've used it, it's been called TE21, Case, and Encase. Now it's Mastery Connect. But the benchmark that we've used has been around 93 to 95% aligned. Like what we see on our benchmarks is pretty close to what we see on our TN Ready test. So that part, like the benchmark that we use, is aligned. What we've tried to do, because I think it goes to what you're saying about with test questions, is we want kids to be able to see test questions that are like what they're going to see on state test. So Mastery Connect has a way, they have question sets for teachers to use. They can create their own assessments. There's some nice features in it for them. They can scan the answers and it will grade it automatically and then load it in. But what that allows them to do is it has an actual standards tracker. So if they're pulling questions on certain standards, those questions are aligned at about a 93 to 95% clip with what they'll see on TN Ready. And they're able to then track how that individual student is doing on that standard. And so what we've tried to do is try to blend, when you have any curriculum plus a way to get some TN Ready style questions, but also to be able, not just once, because what you really don't want is one time a year to be, the 90-minute, 120-minute measure of how you did for the year. You want kids to have opportunities to see a similar type test, while at the same time we don't sacrifice a whole lot of class time, doing multiple benchmarks that take a week of class. Because I think, like the feedback that we got from teachers last year was that, we're sacrificing too much time benchmarking. So we tried to scale back the benchmarking a little bit to give more time for classroom instruction while still being able to, to be able to put our finger on exactly where kids are so that we can identify where they're struggling and give them assistance.
Okay, so just to clarify, what I'm hearing is, okay, the current curriculum may not be aligned completely with the TN Ready test, but we're allowing teachers to bring in some supplemental, like this Master Connect, where students are getting experience with that type of question formatting that's going to be on the TN Ready. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct, because there won't be curricula is not written. Curricula is written to be used nationwide, so there's not going to be a market, unless maybe you're in Texas or California, where they're going to write assessment questions to a specific state's test. That's the that's the toughest part of this, and it's why I used to, for a long time, we expected teachers to write those assessment questions, and it's too time consuming and too much of a challenge to ask teachers to do that. It's you're better served to allow them to work on interpreting the data to be able to help kids, as opposed to trying to spend. I mean, if you talk to high school AP teachers, they'll tell you that they spend a significant amount of their time trying to write tests that mimic the AP exam. And where we can, we try to get out of that business and give our teachers time to teach.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. King. It's been a while, so let me remind us, we are discussing the resolution on here. So, Ms. Hawkins.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, are we putting the cart before the horse here? We're already talking about what we're going to put on the test. It's my understanding we would be voting on whether or not to allow school districts to make retention decisions for 3rd and 4th graders. So my question is this, what does this resolution do that's not already being done? As far as putting a student in a summer school type program if needed, providing tutoring in 4th grade, are those available now?
They are available, Ms. Hawkins. I think the difference is we've always made summer scholars optional. We've made tutoring optional. I think the thing is, like, we would have to, if a parent chose the summer school option, the summer scholars option, the student would have to, well, I mean, like, honestly, there wouldn't be a parent choice. We'd have to say your choice is either this or tutoring or both. And then the child would have to have an attendance rate of 90% for the summer school. And then also attendance, I believe I'll have to look back at the law, it's either 3 or 4 days in the tutoring sessions of at least, is it 30 or 45 minutes? But I think the thing is like it would remove, we would have to, if a student did not participate at that level, we would then have to retain them. And that's something we haven't, you know, I mean, it would put some of our families in a tough spot because, you know, for instance, families where there's divorce and one parent lives out of state, a lot of times they go to stay with mom or dad in the summer, and, you know, we'd be saying you got to make a choice there, which, I mean, we can do any of these things. It's not whether the question is it in the best interest of the child? So to answer your question is that the difference is we would be requiring tutoring or summer scholars. I think the issue on the tutoring is you know, the law states 1-to-3 or 1-to-4 ratio for the tutoring. When you run that to, you know, if you take, say, even 295 kids that would have to have both, plus whoever chose that in the next group, you're talking about a significant number of tutors. That's a scale problem in terms, because, you know, we don't want to, when we're going to bring in tutors to help children, that involves training the tutors, because we don't want to just put anybody in the room. We want to have tutors that can actually help our kids learn how to read. There'd be a lot of training and time in addition to trying to ensure that we had 3 or 4 days a week of tutoring for our kids.
Okay, so right now, who makes the decision as to whether a child is retained or passed to the next grade?
So right now it's a decision between teachers, principal, and parents.
So if this resolution passes, who makes that decision?
Well, I mean, the law would technically make the decision. We would just be, I mean, in a way it'd be the law, and in a way it'd be the parent, because the parent would have to decide we're either going to retain, we're going to do summer school, and or we're going to do tutoring. But if a parent said we're not going to do summer school or tutoring, then that child would be retained.
It almost sounds like the same thing. As far as control, decide whether or not you're going to do tutoring, whether you're going to do summer school, and that's going to determine whether or not you pass to the next grade. The teacher can say that too, right?
Well, the principal would make the call currently in consultation with the teachers and the parent. Like, what this says is it removes the parent choice and the principal and teacher input from the equation, because if you don't score in those upper 2 categories, then you have to do one or both of those things to move to the next grade.
So it really comes down to who says this child has to do the things in order to meet the requirements.
It becomes a state test decision over whether you proceed.
So if the resolution passes, then the parent doesn't have a choice?
No. If we stay with current law, the
Okay.
parent doesn't have
Would the parent have a choice if the teacher said your child is going to be retained?
Under current law, the parent and teacher would meet with the principal and then make a determination together. Or, I'm sorry, under the way we used to do it. Under the current law that we're looking at now, if it's a third or fourth grader, and they score in level 1 or level 2, they would be retained unless they did, you know, either or both.
Okay. It just seems like the same thing to me. Either or, whether the resolution passes or not, the child has to do certain things in order to pass.
Yes.
Either the teacher and principal decide it, or the law decides it.
Right now, unless, and there would be a handful of kids retained in each grade countywide. Right now, with the law that's currently on the books, it would be a significant number of kids, upwards of 1,000 to 1,200, that would either be retained or they would have to complete summer school or tutoring. Right now, parents can opt into it, but we don't make a retention decision based on participation in summer programming or tutoring.
Thank you.
I would also add that you also have other sources of information when a principal and the teacher and the family are looking at everything together. This is mandating that the only thing we're going to consider, is the performance on that one test. So despite, the child was sick, the child, there's other factors that might influence what you're doing on that. And if you have other evidence that you're doing quite well and that you didn't perform well on that test, you're hamstringed to only what you did on that test.
And I think I said this last time in our study session, is that I feel like this is a message to our teachers that they can't do the job, that we are going to have to step in and do it for them. And I think I think the teachers can make these decisions. I think they're trained, I think they're specialized, and I really don't want to take that away from them in situations where a child was sick or they see it up close. And one test for a child, and this makes these determinations, that makes me uncomfortable. So.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. We're going to move to Mr. Gregory in just a second, but discussion and or action regarding a resolution requesting the Tennessee General Assembly to allow school districts to make retention decisions for third grade and fourth grade students. Maybe it's just me, but I think we're chasing a bunch of rabbits down a bunch of holes here tonight when what we're voting on is to send this over there and tell our legislators we're unhappy with your decision on this. That's really all we're doing here. Mr. Gregory.
Personally, I think this whole discussion has to do with maturity. Because kindergarten students, when they register for school the first time, can be as much as 11 months difference in their age. 11 months is a lot of time for kindergarten students to be able to comprehend what's being taught and that. And I know of families who have held their child back in kindergarten just because they didn't feel like they were mature enough to go to school. And I know that you can always think of one example of different things, but one of them is a medical doctor now. So it didn't hurt him. And the age of a kindergarten student and their maturity rate and what the family has provided has a lot to do with what's happening in third grade. A lot more really than what a teacher has done or not done. Now, how can we correct this? Now, this is personal opinions. If we held back a small amount, I don't mean many, a whole lot less than what this state testing is showing in the third grade, in K1 and possibly 2, then I think that would eliminate, and I probably won't have a lot of people agree with me on this, but it would probably eliminate the third grade crisis. Because third grade, it is a big jump. And now I know of a situation like this, where the parent wanted, I think it was a second grade student, first or second, to hold back. This did not happen in my district. In fact, it was a very affluent school in the county. They wanted to hold back their child. The school did not do it. So they took the child out of school, put them in a private school, held them back, and then put them back into public school the following year, and they were fine. Sometimes I think it has to do a lot. Again, I'm repeating myself with that early maturity. Now, some families, they have every educational game possible. They play cards with them. They do, you know, all these gadgets where you play with and do things on them that I can't even do. And by the time they're 5, 6, 7 years old, they're fairly intelligent. And then there are other families that have done very little or nothing. And that happens in all communities, it's not just one. Now, some of these things we have control over, some of them we don't have control over. But I am not in favor of what this third grade testing does. One day, many things can happen the night before. And that's my speech for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Ms. Andrews?
Yeah, I want to circle us back around because I feel like we've probably gotten a little bit off track. All good discussion, but I think we're missing what we're actually discussing. So some of the conversations we've had are kind of what we've done in the past, and some of the discussions is what this law pertains to. And I feel like it's a little bit difficult because the law states it's beginning with the 2022-23 school year. Therefore, we actually haven't done it yet. None of this has actually gone into play. So I feel like that's maybe where a little bit of the confusion is. So what is on our agenda is a resolution to ask our state legislatures, representatives, to correct a bill that they passed this past session that was very restrictive on our students, that does put a tremendous amount of weight on the TN Ready test. What we are asking here is for them in this upcoming session to please revisit this bill and to make these amendments so that it is not so punitive on our students, is what we're asking. I think everyone in this room wants what's best for our students. We want the intervention. We want them to be able to read and have the literacy and so forth. There's not a question on that. And you can look at the history of what we do in Sumner County, that we put those resources when they're identified. We're going to do all that we can for our students to make sure that they succeed. So there's not a question on whether or not that is. The question before us is, do we send this resolution to our representatives to ask them to please make a change to the bill that they passed this past session?
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Lacy?
Yeah, did you say it was or wasn't a good idea to hold back kids when you first started earlier?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, Mr. Lacy, it's kind of case by case. You really have to look at the child. Research shows it doesn't really help most kids. I think but I mean, there are certainly kids that it does help, and we do it sometimes, but it's usually like a last resort because a lot of times, kids learn at different paces, but then they catch up really quickly, and there's obviously some stigma with being held back and things like that. But really, I mean, that's where I think what we're asking for in this resolution is to put that power back in the hands of parents, principals, and teachers to be able to discuss together and make a decision, not like a as Ms. Dam said, one data point from a test, but to be able to let's look at the whole year in this individual child and figure out what's best for that child.
See, I would love for us to put in this, involve the parents in the decision making, because I was texting my wife. She got held back, I believe, in the first grade. The school wanted to pass her, but her mom's, they wanted to send her to summer school, and my wife's mother said, no, I want her to redo the first grade. And it was the best thing that ever happened to her. She went on to finish with honors at her school. So I just want what's best for the kids, and I definitely think the parents know what's best for our kids.
Yeah, I think, sometimes you can see, and I won't belabor it, but like when COVID hit, we had a lot of parents that were very uncertain where their kids were, and there was a lot of, that's the most times we've had parents request to hold children back. And, the conversation we had to have is yes, all kids are experiencing this now. We need to move on, and we'll catch up because we know all kids are missing it. What we can't do is hold 500 or 600 kids back because that's not going to be best for them. But sometimes you got to look at things like age of the child when they get to be in middle school and high school to make sure that's not too out of whack with the other kids that are in those grades.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Mr. Lancaster.
Real quick, I know we've had a lot of discussion, and I understand what the resolution's for. I just do think it's good to understand what the current process is, just because I've had people ask me, well, hey, are y'all just basically sending this back and say we don't want this, without having any focus on we all agree here that we want what's best for the kid. I think the state, in making this law, thinks they're doing what's best for the kid. I think we're all, just want to make that point real quick. But the other thing, or one question, I talk to people every day that don't realize this is current law. Are we planning to send out notice to third grade students, to third grade parents to say, hey, it's September 20th and you've got this, this is, even if we pass this resolution, I know tons of other districts have passed similar resolutions, the state can still say, we're not doing anything. We're full steam ahead. Are we going to let people know as soon as they can, parents know as soon as we can, that this is out there, this is...
So, short answer, yes, and then it will be talked about again many times leading up to actually having to do something if the law doesn't get changed. So I think it's good for them to know, but we've learned in messaging, telling them something today that might impact them next June 1st is going to need to be retold a bunch of times prior to June 1st. Does that make sense? And that's just human nature.
It does.
Yeah.
Like I said, when you talk about, you got vacation plans, everything, all that kind of stuff, like parents, two parent families.
We're really hopeful. I think I know all of you are because you've all spoken this way. We're all really hopeful that this gets considered and changed, but we may not know that until April. So I think it's good for us to let parents know and have this discussion so they're aware of it, even though we're all hopeful that it will change.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Ms. Hawkins.
I want to thank Ms. Andrews for pointing out something that I really had not caught. I thought we were talking about the actual legislation, whether or not we were in approval of it. Just in looking at all the whereases, now it's so clear to me. And the last whereas is whereas Tennessee's failure to afford school districts the discretion to make retention decisions based on all school district information on each student adversely and disproportionately affects students who, for many reasons, might not perform well on standardized tests, but yet demonstrate an understanding of ELA via alternative knowledge assessments. Now, therefore, be it resolved, and this is what we're voting on. Do we agree with this or not? that the Sumner County Board of Education urges the General Assembly to amend TCA 4963-115 to allow school districts to make retention decisions for 3rd grade and 4th grade students based upon all school district information on each student. So I thank Ms. Andrews for pointing that out, that is what we are voting on, is asking the General Assembly to amend to give that power back to us. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr. Daniels. Mr. Johnson.
Oh, is it Mr. Johnson?
I
thought you meant Mr. Dan.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
He said, I thought he texted him or something. All right. Ms. Hayes.
Yes on the resolution.
Mr. Lancaster.
Yes.
Ms. Andrews.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins.
Yes.
Mr. Daniels.
Yes.
Mr. Wise.
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Gregory.
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
Chairman Brewer.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding release of retainage for the Westmoreland football building. Motion approved by Mr. Wise.
I second.
Second by, I got seconds everywhere. I heard Miss Andrews first. Second by Miss Andrews. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Johnson.
Ms. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster. Ms. Andrews.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins.
Yes.
Mr. Daniels.
Yes.
Mr. Wise.
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Gregory.
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
Chairman Brewer.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next item on the agenda.
Discussion and interaction regarding the reduction of retainage for the Liberty Creek Schools project. Motion approved by Mr. Wise. Second by Ms. Brown. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Johnson.
Ms. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster.
Yes.
Ms. Andrews.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins.
Yes.
Mr. Daniels.
Yes.
Mr. Wise.
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Gregory.
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
Chairman Brewer.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Next item on the agenda, discussion and interaction on Katz, Binkley, Jones, and Morris request to submit Liberty Creek Elementary to TSBA for awards consideration.
Motion approved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
I'll take Mr. Gregory.
There you go.
Motion to approve Mr. Gregory, second by Mr. King. Any discussion?
I just
Mr. Lancaster.
quickly, I mean, just as somebody that doesn't know what this means, I mean, do we do anything? I mean, it's just.
Don't do anything. The Tennessee School Board Association each year, they will give awards to architecture firms. You see it in every state, and then they'll forward them for national consideration. We're doing the elementary school this year. Next year, we will do the high school at Liberty Creek. But it's just a formality. Actually, TSBA rules say that the board has to vote before they can submit it.
I just, like I say, I always want to make sure I'm not getting myself into something that I don't know, I'm not aware.
Just a formality.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Mr. Johnson.
I had my light on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Does it cost anything or?
No,
No.
there's no cost to it. It's just, it's an honor. They submit it.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Now, Mr. Johnson.
Ms. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster.
Yes.
Ms. Andrews.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins.
Yes.
Mr. Daniels.
Yes.
Mr. Wise.
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Gregory.
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
No.
Chairman Brewer.
Yes.
Motion passes 10-1.
Next item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding amendments to the general purpose budget. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Ms. Andrews, second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Johnson.
Ms. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Lancaster. Ms. Andrews.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins.
Yes.
Mr. Daniels.
Yes.
Mr. Wise.
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Gregory.
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
Chairman Brewer.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Next item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding amendments to the federal budget. Is there a motion? Motion approved by Ms. Andrews, second by Mr. Lancaster. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Johnson.
Ms. Hayes. Mr. Lancaster. Ms. Andrews. Mr. King.
Yes.
Ms. Hawkins. Mr. Daniels.
Yes.
Mr. Wise.
Yes.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Gregory.
Yes.
Mr. Lacy.
Yes.
Chairman Brewer. Motion passes unanimously.
All righty, next item on the agenda is discussion of study session items. Mr. Johnson, what have we got going on there?
We have some policies coming up. We've got, I think a couple of months ago, we talked about the grading policy for high school. The state has now given us the requirements for middle school, so we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about textbook adoption, and we have some changes to the field trip policy we'd like to discuss.
Can I ask a quick question?
All right.
Can I ask a quick question?
Oh, Ms. Andrews.
Grading policy, they've only given us clarification on middle school, not elementary as well, on the grades that actually receive numeric grades?
Elementary and middle. Elementary and middle, yeah.
All right. Next item on the agenda is communication with board members. Mr. Lacy, we'll start with you tonight.
Yeah, this week, or I guess it was last week, there was a book that I found that was age inappropriate that got approved by Jack Anderson Middle School. This is important to me. It's one of the reasons I decided to run for school board. I would love to have added on the next agenda what our board policy is on age inappropriate material. It was a book called A Place Inside of Me, and it talks about a kid that grows up in this neighborhood or in this community, and there's a girl in that community, a little black girl, that gets killed by police brutality. And it shows them protesting. It has BLM in the book, all through the book. And it shows policemen with like ball bats, like they're going to beat innocent protesters. And I find that absolutely inappropriate for my child, any child, to view. And I would hope that you guys would find that same thing offensive. It's just not appropriate for children that's 6 years old to check that out of the library. So I would love for y'all to review that. And I would like to know what our criteria is that we use to judge those books. It's just not appropriate. We wouldn't want a pro-MAGA book in the library.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Mr. Gregory?
No comment.
Ms. Brown?
I want to thank Tammy for going to speak to the Republican women and explain some of our great things that have happened this year. We always have something, and you probably had a lot more than you could do in 5 minutes. So I really appreciate you doing that.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Wise?
I don't think I'll have any comment tonight, Mr. Chair.
All right, Mr. Daniels?
I'm good tonight, being remote. Thank you.
All right. Ms.
Yeah, just one thing. It looks like News Channel 5 was at Galveston High School today visiting the Green Wave Deli that is run by the CDC program. And it is going to be aired Thursday morning between 6 and 6:45. So for those who are interested in seeing a little something nice and good about Galveston High School, that's when you should tune in.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr. King?
Well, I guess last weekend I had the opportunity to take my son to the county band exhibition, where all the bands in our county performed, and I'm an old band geek myself. I was in marching band, and I just want to say they did an awesome job. It was a great show. If you've never gone to see some of our high school bands perform on the field, I encourage you to go see that. And one thing I'm proud of. My marching band, one of the things that well, let me just put it this way. Our marching band could beat up our football team. That's how good our marching band was. So marching band, I had a really great time, and I think Beach High School just won a competition. And so I just want to give a shout out to all the bands and all the band directors, from one musician to another. We got some great musicians in our county. Thank you.
Mr. King? Ms. Andrews?
Yeah, I have a couple of things tonight. One, I just want to give a shout out to Knox Middle School. They have a player on their team who unfortunately, mom passed away a couple weeks ago from cancer. So at tonight's game against Hawkins, they are honoring her in her memory by wearing purple and just really coming around and supporting that family. You know, I think there's been a couple of times in the past where we've talked about, you know, unique community values, and this is just something that I think of, like when a tragedy like that happens within our community, it didn't take prodding of anybody to do that. There wasn't, you know, we didn't beg. It was instantaneous that this is what we do for our own, and they've really come around and rallied around the boys. There's one boy that's at Knox Doss, another who is a sophomore at Beach High School, and then an older brother who is part of our emergency services through the county. And so that's what they're doing tonight. So I just want to thank them for that and for loving on that family. I also want to, I feel like with opening Liberty Creek and so forth, you know, I've heard some different discussions of people going, you know, making the comments of, we love it, but this is still needed at this school, and this is still needed at that school, and so forth. I know, you know, a decade ago, we made a list of kind of all the things that we needed to address throughout the county. Some very major building projects. We had additions, we had renovations, and so forth, which was incredible work. But I do feel like, I mean, especially even over a 10-year time, that we've had continued wear and tear on our buildings and facilities and so forth. And just in light of realizing that we will have new leadership in a year, and I think that would be something that would be beneficial for them to have presented, to know what they're kind of walking into. I would just like to ask that we maybe make another list of that throughout the year, not necessarily a specific deadline for that to be done, but to kind of go through and reevaluate all of our campuses and look to see which of our campuses, you know, need different things. For instance, I know one of the things that I've had mentioned to me is that most people may not even realize is Union Elementary. Because Union Elementary was originally the black high school in Gallatin, it's my understanding that their gym was not built as big as Gallatin High School, which was for the white students. And that school is a full-fledged elementary school, and they need some space in there. I went to that school, and I have fond memories of that gym and playing dodgeball in there and so forth. But recently walked back in there as an adult and realized it's actually not as big as I remember it. So just even like just addressing some of those issues and identifying what those needs are, and then we can kind of sit down and go, okay, hey, this is feasible for us to address. You know, we did that previously in a phase type of process. So I'd just like to ask that over the course of the next school year, if that's something that we could look into.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Lancaster.
So the past few weeks I've been touring some of my schools, and just wanted to give a, you know, appreciation to Jack Anderson's principal, and also Liberty Creek High School, middle school, and I went to Station Camp Elementary today, and it's all just great to, you know, get around and see how other schools operate compared to the ones my own children attend that I'm more familiar with. And the other thing that I wanted to just briefly mention is we, back in July, late July, early August, we underwent a new meal software. Jeremy knows all about the communication I've had with him over the course of the summer on that, and over that time, found out two of our central office employees were actually manually entering in balances every day, because you would think you could download from one system and upload into another in the year 2022, but you couldn't. So we had people that were manually entering in balances, and that was, I emailed them, you know, my appreciation as a accountant who has done way too much data entry in my career and have a distaste for it. So Michelle Parks and Robert Collins, I don't know exactly, I've never met them, but I did email them, and just the fact that they went above and beyond and made sure that got done, I just appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Ms. Hayes.
Thank you, the board members that voted me to continue as vice chair. I take this as a privilege and an honor to serve this county as vice chair of the Sumner County School Board, so thank you. Don't you just love the start of a new school year? It's just so exciting. And all the activities that are going on in our schools. I mean, the kids were excited to get back. All the sports, the communities coming together that rally around the football games. It's just, it's awesome. I just love it when community gets together like that to support their local schools. There's just so much going on in all the schools in District 1, and everything seems to be going smooth. That would be a sign. I have not gotten a lot of emails. We know if things are going wrong, you get the emails for that. We also have the mom sale, which our ag programs are all doing that at their high schools, and I picked mine up tomorrow, and I'm so excited. So love to support anything that our schools are doing that we can be a part of to support them. Fall break's coming up, so we're just praying for a fun, relaxing week and a safe week for our teachers, our families, everybody who's going to be traveling and on the road, but just a good rest and ready to get back to school after that week. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. I know this may come as quite a shock to y'all, but I don't have but one thing to say. Thank you for electing me for chairman again. I'll do my best to serve you and serve you as well as I know how. Other than that, I don't have anything else to say. So we are adjourned. And I feel so adjourned.